All right. We will call a meeting of the Marathon County Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee to order. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Nobody has approached me, and I don't see anybody in attendance outside of people that are here for agenda items. So we will move on to the approval of the minutes from the February 8th meeting. What are your wishes?
McKeel move to approve.
Moved by Arstead,
Fisher to second.
seconded by Fisher. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of the minutes will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. In light of the full agenda, we are going to pull the educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and move those to our informational meeting. So we'll go on to operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. Discussion and possible action on approval of the claims and question costs. That was sent to you last week. I think there were 3 attachments. Any questions or motions?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Been moved by Chair Gibbs. Is there a second?
Second by Fisher.
Second by Fisher to approve the claims and question costs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yi is trying to get into the meeting, so he's in the waiting room.
Sorry?
That carries. All right. Interdepartmental budget transfers. We have, I think, 4 before us. I think they probably beg for some explanations, clarifications, and grilling of parties.
Actually, the first one on there is for the grant. That is the state grant for the North Central Healthcare Marathon County that you'll be taking up later. So it really attaches to that resolution for approval of that grant.
Okay.
And then there's a carryover for county administration. A transfer from fund balance, and that's just a CIP one, kind of like you did for the broadband. It was in the CIP and you rolled over the CIP dollars. This is for rolling stock for facilities and capital management. Big surprise, they weren't able to purchase and obtain the piece of equipment they were going to get in 2021, but it will be here and delivered this year. So that's a transfer in of just that piece of rolling stock. And the last one is a public safety grant.
And Chad Phillip is here to comment on the last grant.
Thank you for having me, and I've got Captain Stefanik here from our Investigations Division in case there's additional questions or technology-related questions on this. I think it's important that the committee understand that I believe last month even, you're starting to see more grants from us. And one of those reasons is because we have a new arrangement agreement with the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Emergency Management Division, where we've become an alert team for SWAT. Now, that's kind of separate from what we're going to talk about here, but I want to give some just a context. That gives us an opportunity to get a lot of equipment that will be used regionally here for us. Things that we maybe haven't had before. It can be medical equipment. It can be equipment for trucks. We use it for our bomb squad. We use it for our dive team. They are all alert teams. And because there are more resources coming in, you will likely be seeing more grants. The grant that we have before you today, though, is one for something called ALPR, or Automated License Plate Reader. If you're familiar with how the city of Wausau does their parking enforcement, they have a car that drives around the city, it has cameras on the car, and it takes pictures of license plates, and then that's how they know how to issue traffic citations. The technology is identical. That's something that we want to do, except that we are not looking to put it in our cars. Instead, what we are looking to do is put these in locations out on the interstate. So what these cameras will be looking for is things like Amber Alerts, silver alerts, stolen vehicles, homicide suspects, narcotics investigations, those types of large criminal investigations that are taking place. My roommate from college is the sheriff of Columbia County. They have these units in their county, and they recently had an Amber Alert out of Wood County that came into their county, and that camera alerted them that that Amber Alert vehicle was in their county, and they were able to get out and get on that vehicle right away and then make a stop of that vehicle, I believe, just into Dane County. So they've got a really good public safety nexus to them. We understand that people, the public, are going to say, well, that's reading my license plate. Is it an encroachment on privacy and things like that? And what we want to assure everyone is, number one, that machine is not pulling from the National License Plate Database. It's not going out to something that we call NCIC or the National Crime Information Center or CIB, the Crime Information Bureau, and pulling that. It's actually pulling license plates from vehicles we put in. We select the vehicles we want to put in. These are vehicles that we are looking for a reason. And like Amber Alert vehicles, Silver Alert vehicles, we actually have to do a download daily and put that into the system in order for us to have updated information on things like Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts. So it's not automated in the sense that we are constantly searching people's plates and getting personal information. It's very specific and directed information that we're using in order to go out and do our jobs more efficiently and effectively. So as you look to approve this grant, we just wanted you to be aware of the technology, what it is, and how we're using it, so that you're just reassured that it's not something that's just being used as a blanket throughout the community. And Jeff, I would offer, if you've got anything to add that I missed.
You hit the high points there. I'll grab a mic here. I would agree with all of those high points. The capability is very prevalent now in law enforcement. There's over 1,000 agencies nationwide that are doing it. Chief Deputy mentioned that Wausau PD has this capability and is most likely expanding that in the near future. In just to piggyback on his comment about not using it for blanket purposes, one of the concerns is, expired registration on plates. We are not going to be looking for those types of violations. We're not going to be looking for traffic violations, period. We are looking for people who are bringing meth and heroin into Marathon County. We're looking for homicide suspects. We're looking for people who are already subject to police investigations or are missing and endangered. I can entertain any other questions related to those types of investigations for anybody who has them.
Are there any questions of the Sheriff's Department? Chair Gibbs.
So what this would give us with this grant is 4 cameras. 4 cameras, right, Jeff, if I remember right? 5 cameras for 4 years. So what we would be looking at then as a reevaluation of this program at the end of those 4 years to say, is this something we want to continue? And if that's the case, then we would have to look for levy dollars. It's about $12,000 a year in order to do this, or look at other grant opportunities. This, in this case, is a grant that's affording us the ability to do this.
I'll add to that. The grant covers 5 cameras for 4 years. However, the vendor that we are most likely going with for this product is very business savvy, and they provide 10 cameras. The second 5 are free because they are so confident we are going to love them after we try them that we're going to want to purchase more. If after 6 months or a year we tell them that we don't want those extra 5, they remove them, no questions asked. But our grant covers 5 cameras for 4 years.
And they need to know that we don't have funding for the other 5. So what I would also say with this company is that they have a web, if you will, of consumers across the state. The Fox Valley and the southeast corner of the state are very prevalent. The sheriff of Clark County is considering the technology right now, and we can enter into MOUs with them in order to share our information and they share theirs, so that if our vehicle leaves Marathon County on an Amber Alert, they would automatically be fed in and be getting that information, and they wouldn't have to go do a live update like we were talking about this daily. They would just get it. So in those critical situations, we would have MOUs with them to expand our capabilities in order for the purposes of public safety.
How does this compare to, for instance, the Illinois Tollway? I think they've gone to readers for,
The technology works just like going to Tommy Wash and getting your car washed. It's doing the same type of thing. Yes, that's that same
the same concept.
same concept.
So are there any questions, concerns? Will you repeat?
Mr. Chair, this is Craig.
Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you. Chad, is this going to include people that have warrants? Are they going to be listed as far as if they have, license plates listed to them?
No, we are not looking to do it just for simple warrants. Now, if we had a warrant for a homicide suspect, yes. But we're not looking for like a child support warrant. No, we're not going to be doing that because our phones will be going off nonstop, and there's no way we have the resources in order to go out and deal with those.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yep. Supervisor Fisher here.
Go ahead.
So just for a clarification's sake, the grant is for the actual equipment purchase. So the grant here of the 48,300 would cover the 5 cameras. Is that then a need for additional staffing to monitor the back end of that system? Or will that be more so just on an as-needed basis?
That is just on an as-needed basis. The system's automated so that the staff that are using the system tell it when to send them a text message or an email, and the software is included in that price. So it's a total package, and it's meant for just specific cases. That's why we're not like putting it in every one of our cars. If we did that, that becomes more labor intensive, and we're not set up for that.
So does that information
Okay,
go to the
thank you.
dispatchers?
The Amber Alerts, so you will set it up by category. The Amber Alerts will go to dispatchers, the Silver Alerts will go to dispatchers, but if an investigator's looking for a certain vehicle for some reason, that only goes to the investigator.
The software support is for the same 3-year period?
For the 4-year period. It's a package.
Are there any other questions? We can deal with all of the transfers together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to talk about your? Are there any other questions relative to the, go ahead, Kurt.
I make a motion to approve all the interdepartmental transfers.
Is there a seconded by Leahy? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion to approve the intergovernmental transfers will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. That'll take us on to the ARPA policy program request applications, timelines, and funding plan review of the topic in regards to ARPA.
Do have additional caller, a 715 number ending in a 00, if that person could identify themselves.
Again, the person whose phone number ends in 00, if you could identify yourself for the purposes of the minutes. All right, we'll move on to the ARPA. Administrator Leonard.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Robinson. Just a real quick update, and certainly if anyone has any questions or wants to make comments, but this item is on the agenda, and you do have information in your packet. Just again, summarizing the discussions you previously had. We have had the online application process up and running for several weeks now. We have received quite a number of projects thus far. In fact, I'd say at least about a dozen, maybe perhaps more than a dozen. For those of you that have been on the Wisconsin Counties Association weekly leadership calls, I just thought it would be appropriate to give a little bit of a review of that discussion and some of the experiences that other counties, and I would say Marathon County is consistent and is in its experience, and that is that the influx of the significant amount of ARPA dollars, as well as the influx of dollars we anticipate through the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed federally, really is creating a bit of a concern relative to contractors or construction resources to carry out infrastructure-related projects, but also project management resources to carry out not only the infrastructure-related or capital projects, but also all the other projects you may be looking to move forward utilizing some of these dollars. On the call this week, Milwaukee County representatives gave a little bit of insight into their experience, and I think again our experience is going to be similar. I can tell you with the 12 projects that we've received thus far, a significant amount of staff resources are going to be necessary to really further evaluate those projects, make sure that that this committee and the full board have access to all of the information you're going to need, first and foremost, to know whether or not the project does live in one of those eligible ARPA buckets as opposed to within the lost revenue category. But just again, in terms of an update, there 12 have been received. They have been both internally and externally generated. One of the strategies that I'm going to seek some guidance from this committee on moving forward is to be mindful of those limited construction and project management resources. What I've asked staff to do is essentially go through all of the capital-related projects and other projects that were funded through the budget, the 2022 budget, and identify any project that we're already moving forward with that might otherwise qualify for ARPA-related funding outside of that lost revenue category for further examination. And we'll do the same for any project that falls into that lost revenue category, because, like I said, one of my concerns is related to whether or not we'll have enough resources to carry out those projects, both externally in terms of contractors, but also internally in terms of project management and just existing staff. So we're going to generate that list. So you'll see the list of ARPA submissions grow, certainly beyond that 12. But we'll bring those to you for further evaluation in the next couple of months. We'll continue to give you updates, but wanted to at least have that on there for discussion today. And if anyone else has anything, I know Chair Robinson and Chair Gibbs were both on the Wisconsin Counties Association call on Monday, but happy to take any questions.
And again, I just want to reiterate what the Administrator said, but the issue starts at the design stage. And I think we're starting to see, as we see the Great Resignation process occur, we're starting to see issues or Milwaukee County in particular, we're seeing issues relative to their internal capabilities in their facilities department to design and then take out for proposal and then actually get proposals and then manage the contract. So I think that it begs for us, given the fact that we have to commit the money by 2024 and spend the money by 2026, we need to rethink how we're approaching some of those capital projects to make sure we accelerate the time frame, because if we wait till the end, everybody's waiting, and you're seeing that the influx of dollars for infrastructure in other areas, whether it's roads or bridges or other facilities. So we need to perhaps give some thought to how we might go about approaching that to make sure that we've got the staffing capabilities and we can reach out to others. And what they're finding, what Milwaukee found, is that even the private sector lack the capacity to respond appropriately because their plates are full. So we have to rethink how we're approaching projects. Chair Gibbs?
Yeah, I think one of the telling signs was when Milwaukee County, and they had a great presentation when they illustrated, they had an RFP out for assistance in management of projects, and they only had 2 responses to that. With $100 million worth of projects, they were really concerned, and I think that's only going to continue to get worse as far as the ability of the private sector to be able to respond to all the requests to utilize all the capital money that's going to be available.
If I can add one more thing, I'll ask Christy to elaborate. I think one other benefit of at least examining, bringing before the committee the potential strategy of taking our already existing projects, and you'll recall in your 2022 budget that you approved, you gave direction to administration to bring forward a budget that, as I termed it, was just fix it, really to address a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of other projects that hadn't been moved forward. So we did that. So Christy has been doing some calculations, excuse me, to try to give some idea or get some ideas to the potential financial benefit that would be generated or conferred upon the county, I should say, if we do reduce the borrowing need that you'll see under item 5B, 5B4, that is on your current agenda, and it could be significant. So Christy, I don't know if you want to just give a little bit of a.
Yep, that's a nice segue. What we did is when we get to that item, I'll bring up that information because it's going to show the plan itself, what we intended to borrow based on what was approved, and it will show an incremental reduction in that amount that we'll borrow. Hopefully we could offset with ARPA funding, and that shows you the significant difference in savings. We'll talk about that at that time, if that's okay.
All right, any questions relative to the process? So I know that outside groups are interested because I've received several contacts and we've referred them to the online forum. Yeah, so we may want to just give the county board an update on where we are in that process as well at the March meeting. Anything else? It was more of an educational update. All right, we will move on then to tax deed properties. The 404 West Main Street in Village of Spencer. You know, is Kim?
Yep, Kim is on.
Hi, everyone. I'm down in Madison at a conference, so thank you for allowing me to be here remotely. We did receive a tax deed bid on Friday for the 404 West Main Street in Spencer. This was originally up for bid opening in December, and we did not receive any bids for it. So Corp Counsel Michael has the bid there that he can open, and then I can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, this is a bid from a David Yoder, Y-O-D-E-R, in the amount of $32,000. It is accompanied by a cashier's check in the amount of $3,500, which is more than the 10% required.
So we had an appraised.
And when he
value of
dropped off the
35.
bid, he let me know he was going to have more in his certified check. So
Do you know what our outstanding taxes were in specials on that property?
when we took the property, the outstanding tax assessment was at $17,770.78.
Right, is this considered a homestead property for the purposes of, would Mr. Comet, is it?
I'm sorry, it was $18,770. No, it was not homestead.
All right, so we have an assessment that came in at 35,000. We have a bid at 32,000. We have outstanding, or county has 18,778 plus into it. What are the wishes of the committee? Chair Gibbs.
When was that property appraised? It was, you said there was an appraised value or assessed value of 35,000, but what's the appraised value of it?
It is
The appraised value was 35,000, and that was done last summer. In your packet is the appraisal.
September 1st.
I didn't pull that up to look at it. What was it?
It was done on September 1st of 2021.
Thank you, Christy. So it's a fairly recent appraisal.
So we had no bids in December. We have one bid in March.
This is the property that had the fire in the garage. So that is something that is in the work plan for maintenance to take care of once the weather turns, to remove that garage.
Is the county removing the garage, or is that the responsibility of the
County would be
bidder?
If it's not sold, the county would be responsible for it. If it is sold as is. So if the property is sold, then the new owner would be responsible for that.
Mr. Chairman, do we have any estimate as to what cost it would be to the county to have that property cleaned up as far as the garage? Was that going to be done by infrastructure, highway committee, or a highway department? Or were we going to contract for that? Because if we're going to contract for it, we're going to pay more than $3,000 to get that cleaned up. Then we would, so my approach would be my motion, well, let me get the answer to those questions first. Or if we don't know.
I believe Terry Kaiser was going to look at it, whether his department could do it or whether it would need to be put out for bid once the property was, once the weather turned and the snow was gone.
So we really don't know what the cost would be to clean it up, or whether the department was going to, either way, it's still going to cost if the department does it with their staff and stuff.
Correct.
With that in mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to accept the bid at $32,000.
Is there a second? Seconded by Leahy.
McEwen, second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
So we have an update from the Treasurer's Office on tax delinquent properties. Connie?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Just want to let you know that the Treasurer's Office had just mailed out 2,202 delinquent notices to parcels that are not paid the first installment for 2021. And that they also, in our last meeting I indicated that we signed up for the Wisconsin Help for Homeowners that launched today with the Department of Revenue. So that is for homeowners that were economically impacted since January 21st of 2020 to get their taxes paid. So that just released today. They have to fill out an application with them to get the funding to them, and they have $40,000 set aside out of the for this federally funded program to help these taxpayers. We do have this information also in our office, and when they call us, we're kind of encouraging them to contact the Help for Homeowners. And I just wanted to give you another update. We had contracted with Runkle to do our research for our properties on tax deed. Currently, they have 50 of them, and we already have 5 of them in the mail. So, and we've been contacted by 2 residents to purchase one of the properties, and that impact to the county is they owe us $106,000. So that property has 2 people currently looking to purchase it without going to tax deed.
So how does the 2,202 compare to other years? Do you know in terms of the notice?
Last year, we had a lot more. We had almost 2,400 last year. But I mean, they're kind of mostly the simple ones. Some of them just missed part of it. These people just, some of them just didn't pay at all. Some of them claim they never got a tax bill, which they did receive it, and they called us later. So some of them are just, they're calling us now and knowing that they forgot to pay it or it got lost in the mail. There's a lot of different reasons with this one. So, I mean, they vary each year. They're around 2,300, maybe 2,600 the year before that. So,
Connie, do we know the amount of property tax that is delinquent on the 2,200 properties?
no, I don't have that dollar amount.
Because correct me if I'm not wrong, I think we still are required to settle with all the municipalities on those 2,200 properties.
Yep, we settled. We've already done January, February settlements, and they've already been notified what their August settlement is. So when that's paid out, then hopefully those payments will be relinquished this before July 31st. So we're hoping to get we do get most of them back, but then some of these also are probably part of the other parcels that continue to stay delinquent, which the years of 2009 to 2017, there are tax deed eligible properties with back taxes of, there's 329 parcels. And from 2018, tax deed eligible after August of 2022, we increase it by 117 parcels. So this year we've got 50 of them already started with Runkle. We're hoping to get more this year, but we're also hoping that they come forward to us and pay their taxes. And some of them have already discussed some things with us. So we're hoping it continues that way.
So the 50 properties that Runkle's reviewing are out of the 329?
Yes.
And so those are delinquent, and we are looking at taking the tax deed, but we have not yet done that.
Yes.
So then we're looking.
We are in the process.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. We are in the process. We got the 50 that we're looking at are the most critical to the county. Those are the ones that have the highest dollar value given back to the county. Like I said, we have one of them currently right now that owes the county $106,000. So out of that list that we provided you when we gave you the first education on how the process works, the 50 are part of that whole 100 that we gave you that were seriously in high value to the county. So those are the ones that we are going after right now.
So as it relates to the 2018 tax deed that are eligible for, or properties that are eligible for tax deed taking in August, there's 117. What do you anticipate will, what will I would imagine as we get serious, people pay up? What's our experience been in the past?
I mean, in the past, people have come forward to pay. People have already contacted us to get a loan to pay it off. They want to know what the impact of it is to them on their homes. That obviously that the county will take the property, but we're kind of encouraging them to either get a loan or, get on a payment plan if they can. Now, these 117 new parcels that would be coming in after August, those are 3+ years eligible. So they're just hitting that mark. So, and also with this, the Wisconsin homeowners, it'll help them also pay for their current taxes, and then they could work something out with us to pay the rest of it.
So are we?
But we're also having, yes, we are communicating with the community about this. They did not want us to release anything as of today. That's when they first launched it.
Are there any questions? If not, thank you for that update, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Do you have a
Okay,
timeframe for
thank you.
Runkle delivering those 50?
We
titles?
get 5 parcels every 2 weeks. So it takes us time because once they give us the research, we have to make sure we notify everybody that has a lien. Anything that like medical liens on it, anything that we have to notify anybody else of any money that is owed to them on that property. So right now we have 5 of them already sent out. So like I said, every 2 weeks, they're giving us 5 more.
So once
And they're all
we,
at $75.
so what's the process? So
Once they're,
we get the information from Runkle, you review it, we notify the lien holders, and then when do we take title?
they have 90 days to pay. So we give them certified letters the first 3 months, and then we possibly do an environmental study in between there. But they do have 90 days to pay, and we're hoping that they do come forward to us with a solution on paying their taxes. So the first 5, it'll be at least, like I said, it's 3 months before we can do anything about taking the property.
And Connie, this is Lance. Just to add one piece, the reason we're staging them 5 every 2 weeks is because not only do you have those time frames, but if you miss a deadline in terms of notice throughout that process, we essentially need to start over, correct? So we're trying to stage
Yes.
these so that we, again, like I brought up with respect to ARPA, you know, Connie's relatively new in her position, as am I. We didn't get into the 329 backlog in a year, and it's going to take us longer than a year to dig out. So we're trying to make sure that we're mindful of the staff resources that it takes to process these properties. And you'll recall in the previous budget, we did allocate a portion of a position that's essentially shared between Mike's office and Connie's office to really take the lead on this. So correct me if I'm wrong, though, Connie, that's the reason we're staging them out 5 every 2 weeks.
Yes, because we need to have the staff be able to send the letters out, and we have to publish it and then notify the departments when they're eligible for the environmental study.
Any other questions? Not, thank you. Thank you very much. We will now move on to approval of the grant agreement between Marathon County and North Central Community Services Program and the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration. And that was one of the budget transfers that we dealt with.
There's also the additional resolution in the packet number 2. I don't know if we can bring it up on the screen. That would be in the packet that came.
You want to share that?
And I can kick this one off. So this agenda item is here. The State Building Commission has approved a $5 million grant for which North Central Healthcare has applied. As a condition to disbursement of those funds, we have to agree to the grant agreement and the use restriction agreement that is in your packet. It's coming through this committee because this will have an impact on the county's ownership of that building. And so the agreements that you see, they're actually not yet in their final form. There'll be 2 material changes as I'm still negotiating with the state's attorney on some of the proposed changes. One of them is we're going to limit the legal description just to the adult behavioral hospital. And so that is going to be the only building that the state will have a lien interest in. Unfortunately, it has to be against the entire building. They cannot do just one floor where actually all of these improvements are located. Otherwise, we'd have to make it a condominium, and that will actually complicate the grant. However, the state's attorney proceeded under the assumption that this was a new building. Whenever it's a new building, the state's interest is calculated by the amount of the grant divided by the denominator of the amount of improvement. And in this case, that would be about 38%. However, when it's an improvement to an existing building, as is the case here, then the state interest is determined by taking the value of the grant and dividing it by the value of the actual building. And so in this case, that percentage interest is going to significantly reduce if the building is valued at over $13 million, which it should be because that's just the value of improvement. However, we'll have to adjust the use restriction agreement paragraph 4 to reflect this new change once we obtain from the county the value of the building. They're going to need either an appraised value or an assessed value so that we can come up with that denominator.
And then, did we talk at all about modifying the notice?
The notice we can modify to include the county administrator as well as the NCHC CEO. And that's only in the event of default. But hopefully here, due to the nature of the default, we know before any notice was even sent to us because the NCHC leadership as well as the NCHC executive committee and the board should be aware that if we cannot meet our obligations under the grant. However, that's not to say that we shouldn't also notify proper county officials. So to the extent that the need arises, they can protect their property interest.
So what I'm hearing is that there are some negotiations taking place yet relative to the scope of the agreement in terms of the building, which would affect Appendix A in the warranty deed. And those will be worked through at a later date, subject to the discussions with the state.
Yes.
Correct. And they're actually going to be in the county's interest because what we're going to do is we're going to limit the state's interest in only one building. And with the new calculation, that interest that the state will have will significantly reduce because we're going to use a calculation with building value and not the value of improvement. So it's going to reduce from 38% to a much lower number, but I don't know what that number is going to be because I don't know yet at this time what the value of the building is.
This is Administrator Leonard, and I think Dan, thank you, Dan and Mike, for the comments. Just in a little bit of context setting. So as you all know, we are engaged currently in a very significant renovation at the campus on Lakeview Drive currently that North Central operates a significant portion of that campus. This $5 million grant was a grant that we applied for through the State Building Commission, essentially to defray some of the increases in costs that we were experiencing through that construction project. As Dan alluded to, the grant from the state, the $5 million, does in fact come with some, I'll call it limited strings. There is some risk. Now, essentially, this is going to be an oversimplification, but the choice that the county has essentially is to accept the $5 million with those strings or those requirements that the state sets forth in the document, and Dan can go through those. But essentially, what that is requiring is that that Marathon County through North Central continue to deliver certain required services for the term of that agreement. In the event the county does not do that, the state has the ability to seek some form of redress, and Dan can go through that as well. The flip side of that is you can say we're not going to accept the $5 million, but having worked with the board for some time, I think those of you that have been on the board, you know that there has been a long-standing desire to expand services relative to mental health and behavioral health at North Central, and the renovation allows us to do that in a more effective and efficient way. I don't see us transitioning away from the required services that are laid out in the agreement. That's not to say that we couldn't, that future circumstances might be such that we make that choice. But right now, the state has offered $5 million to address a need that not only the state sees as a significant need, but certainly Marathon County has seen as a significant need moving forward. So that's the kind of the 40,000 foot high level context of this agreement and the work that staff from North Central and staff from Marathon County have been undertaking to not only seek out the grant, but also continue to negotiate the agreement that Dan has referenced. So certainly if anyone has any questions, we can try to discuss those and bring you any additional information you might need.
Chair Gibbs?
One other thing, I think, Dan, correct me if I'm not wrong, but this lien is contractual for a 10-year period to provide this services for a 10-year period, is it not?
So actually, we have an obligation for a 10-year period to provide these services in this capacity and also extended to 3 neighboring counties. However, the state's bond is a 20-year one. And so within this agreement, they're actually referencing 20 years, even though the budget references 10. And so their attorney explained to me that it has to be tied to the bond. So technically the obligation would be for 20 years, or unless the grant's purpose is completed prior to that time. So there's language in here that if it's completed prior to that time, and I believe here, yes, it would be completed within 10 years as intended by the budget. And I believe it's 2021 Act 58, if I'm not mistaken.
So I know we've got representatives from the Sheriff's Department here, but I will comment, the Wausau Policing Task Force just finished its recommendations, and one of the issues that we spent quite a bit of time talking about was 5115 placements and the need for expedited processes in facilities. And I think having this facility in the county will go a long way on saving transport time to Winnebago and other facilities, and could have a positive impact upon the operations of the Sheriff's Department, Police Department, and other law enforcement agencies in the county, and it's long overdue. We've been talking about this for years, and if we have the ability to provide it, it's a good thing, both in terms of the quality of care and reducing some of the burden on law enforcement. Kurt?
Just one other comment. The overages that the administrator alluded to a little bit, if we choose not to accept the state, $5 million would require this, because the construction, although not the final phase has not been completed, would probably require an additional $5 million borrowing by this committee, by the board, to fund those renovations.
So understanding that it's still a agreement in search of finality, but we do have a resolution before us. So what are your wishes? Chair Gibbs?
I'll make a motion that we approve and forward to the full board for its, or we recommend approval to the full board for its consideration.
Is there a second? Seconded by Leahy.
Second.
Any discussion?
Supervisor Fisher here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I personally, I'm completely for this. Obviously, being a $5 million grant to assist in providing this service to our within the Tri-County agreement is incredibly important. One question is has this information been passed by the executive management team of NCHC, knowing that they would essentially be captured into providing this service, whether they wanted to or not, in any form, that would have to meet this grant obligation? Have they been brought up to speed on this?
That's a good question, actually. Jill Meschke, she was a big part of us getting this grant. She worked very closely with me in working with the state to get everything that we needed in order for the state building commission to approve this. Jill is actually, I believe, present with us today. So Jill, if you want to comment on that.
Sure, I can do that. Hi, everyone. Yes, so we are aware that that would be services that we would be required to provide for 3 additional counties for that period of the grant. In preparation for that, we've started to put some of those contracts in place with those 3 additional counties, and all of that would still be in the scope that we would have to consider making sure that we have enough space for the residents of the 3 county partners, first and foremost, in that facility. And we do have the ability, if for some reason we would have to not allow a particular patient into the hospital, we would have the ability to do that as well, either for space constraints or for that person not being right for our patient population at that time. But that is something we're very aware of, and we're looking forward to having the additional space in the new hospital.
Excellent. Thank you both. And in that consideration, then I'm 100% in support of moving this forward. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Capital improvement funding for upfront. The
Chair,
initial-
Chair Robinson, that's really rolled into the initial and the reimbursement resolutions that are down further on the item, so it would just be discussion under that.
Okay, we'll take that up at that time, or? Okay, we'll move on to authorization of the county support for Public Service Commission broadband grants. And I'll try to provide an update from what happened at the Broadband Task Force and at the Infrastructure Committee. We put out a solicitation for internet service providers to come to the county with proposals relative to an application to the Public Service Commission that is due on March 17th. You all should have received something on Monday morning that we sent out to the towns looking for their support for the grant. One of the things that we have learned in dealing with broadband expansion is that it's an ever-changing world. When we started discussing, and Noor Ali-Hassan is here, and she's done a great job of working with internet service providers and trying to get them in. We had proposals from LTD to serve their RDOF area on the western side of the county. They have subsequently withdrawn from or don't have a proposal before us. Charter Communication met with us and submitted a proposal that served the Harrison, Easton, Croninwater area and other areas. We were concerned about overlapping grants, and they have withdrawn their application at this time. We have had discussions with Serenity, the Wittenberg Telephone Company, to serve the town of Reed, a little bit of event with Bug Tussle to expand fiber to the premise in Croninwater, and a little bit of Gunther. And Frontier Communications has brought in a proposal to serve several communities throughout the county, and we provided that in a map to you. During our discussions, again, we were trying, the Broadband Task Force recommended that we provide funding at a level of $235 per unit covered. And that was based upon Frontier's cost and Serenity's cost to the county. They're looking for a PSE grant of a little over $1 million and $70,000 from the county. They've also secured $70,000 from the town of Reed. But the thought was we would make that a forgivable loan to all parties based upon their submittals on February 28th. We asked them to update that. So Bug Tussle would serve 605 units. Based upon that, at that time, Frontier was looking at 4,024 and Serenity 368. We also had discussions, we had significantly more requested in terms of grants from the communities, and the Broadband Task Force recommendation was, rather than giving grants, that we make low interest or no interest loans available to those parties for the balance. Bug Tussle had requested 1.5 million in county support. If we made a grant, we indicated our preference for a loan. They've indicated then that they would pursue a $3 million loan if they were a successful applicant, and pay that over a time certain. To put that in context, in our November agreement with them, they went out and borrowed $25 million for Marathon County, affecting Marathon County for broadband expansion. Their effective interest rate was 3.24. If you took $3 million and did a borrowing at 3.24 and you did 0%, the value of that would be $1,080,000 plus. So there's real value to the parties accessing lower or no interest loans. So the recommendation that came out of the Broadband Task Force clarification based on what the ever-changing sands of proposals are, were that we advance the Frontier, Serenity, and Bug Tussle proposals. There's a resolution in your packet. As of this morning, Frontier communicated to us that they had looked at their original outline of coverage of 424. There was some overlap with TDS. Again, we are concerned as a broadband task force and in a county that we reduce duplication in the grant areas as much as possible, because in the past, when you have duplication in your grants, Public Service Commission will entertain objections from other providers. If there's a lot of objections, they tend to not fund those projects. So the last cycle, we had $38 million of funding requests for Marathon County between Frontier, Charter, Bug Tussle, Country Wireless, and Serenity. And the only one that was funded was Serenity for under $1 million. So we weren't very successful. So we continue to try to drive the applicants to look at areas that are unserved or underserved. But we have a much bigger footprint from Frontier this afternoon. They're looking at serving over 10,000 parties, but they indicated in their communication that they would be looking for the county share to be based upon their initial volume of 4,024 units served. Units are homes or businesses in those areas, and again, we would make the loans forgivable. That turn them into grant when they basically light them up. So we're looking. Chair Gibbs had suggested that we put a fiscal note in there. And the resolution is written, so it's based on the proposals that were before us on February 28th in terms of quantifying the cost of the county. The cost would be about a little over $3,914,088. Plus 70,000 net. So we've got to add the 70,000 in for Serenity. So $4 million, a little over $4 million. The thought is that we currently have $114,000 left in our capital expenditure review projects program based on unused balance from last year. We could fund Serenity out of that if they were successful. And again, these are if successful. We only make the awards if successful. So we'd be looking at just under potentially using the Arpa dollars to make a loan or grant to serve those approximately 5,000 plus now potentially 11,000 residents holding that firm. And again, the grants are due next week. We are trying to gather letters of support. we will need to update our request based on Frontier. My fear is that there still is some overlap between areas served by Serenity, Bug Tussle, TDS, and Charter, potentially within the Frontier application, but we're running out of time if we're going to be successful with our grant application. And I would look to Chair Knorr or Chair Gibbs, because they've all been involved in that, for additional comments, clarification.
It just seems that with Frontier's updated map, that the area which Serenity is in right now, it just shows even more of an overlap. They just added more locations in that area, so that's the one thing that really stood out to me. But at the same time, they are going into areas that are underserved as well. Such as, the town of Harrison. I know they've been eager to get some internet service there, so it's a fine balance.
No, I think, one of the things that obviously is the challenge is when the entity, whoever the ISP is, they have a business purpose to get from one place to another place, potentially with their fiber, and they may in fact go over areas that already are served, and that becomes really challenging, as Chair Robinson pointed out. But I think the approach that was suggested by the Broadband Task Force, not to exceed the 235 per resident served, based on the number that was submitted initially, the 4,094 by Frontier, and the 605 by Bug Tussle, and then the Serenity proposal. I think if we are going to be successful, the hope would be that we could support that whole project, because again, it brings broadband service to areas that are really, really significantly hard to be able to deliver to, especially the Harrison area, for example. One of the proposals came from Charter in that area, and their cost was significant, up to almost $7,000 to deliver service to a resident out in that area. So, and it's because of the sparsity of the population in that township. So if we can, if we are successful, or if I should say, if Frontier is successful, Charter was asking for 1.6 from the county. So at 944, and they're going to be able to potentially deliver service to as many as 10,000 residents in the county, even though some of those are already currently served, I think would be, a tremendous increase of service to the citizens in the county.
So you have a resolution in packet 2. I think what we would do is attach a fiscal note to that for clarification, and then we're going to, again, Frontier has indicated that they would, even though they've expanded their scope, they would continue to look for the 944 versus the 235 times the service area. So we will need to make sure that we're capturing that. I think we do that with the proposals and the language in there. Are there any questions? And I would comment, I think one of the things that the Broadband Task Force and others have learned is that going forward, we will be using the information obtained through Geo Partners, and we're encouraging people to fill out that speed test. We're going to select the areas where we're going to try to drive the behavior of the internet service providers into those underserved areas, and I think it's just easier on us to target our resources and set the priorities if we can use the speed test, like where we've got the greatest need, and move forward based on that. So I think we're going to contemplate changing our approach to how we interface with internet service providers going forward.
Mr. Chair, this is Craig.
Go ahead, Craig.
Was there any concern with Frontier with the past issues we've had with them in Marathon County?
Scott Bowler's been part of our discussions, and I think we recognize that they've got an old distribution system of copper wires for phones, and they were trying to use copper wires for DSL lines. They received funding under CAF 2 for broadband expansion, but it was based on a speed of 10.1. We've had those discussions with them. According to Scott, their intent is to overlay fiber onto their existing service areas and to have redundant service, both the copper lines and potentially up to gigabyte service to those homes and in their proposal. But hopefully this would allow for voice over internet. It would allow for expanded. I think corporately they've adopted a different approach. They are in reorganization right now. They were, I think, limping along with with copper. They're now looking at the future and looking at fiber. So hopefully many of the problems will go away. Not all if people don't upgrade to the fiber to the premise. And it won't serve.
Thank you.
I don't know that it's going to serve all of their customers. We don't have that map and that overlay. Nor is there, you've had the discussions, anything?
They're basically going to overbuild on what they currently have, the system that they have. I know from receiving calls from the speed test from the public, a lot of the issues I've heard a lot about Frontier. So I believe that it would be a good way if they do get approved. I think the fiber to the premise will improve a lot of these problems and issues.
Any other questions? If not, a motion would be in order. Moved by Supervisor Leahy, seconded by Arsted. Any discussion? Chair Gibbs.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put a motion to amend the resolution to include a not to exceed amount of $4,015,405. That would be the 235 times the three that are the three requests. That includes the 70,000 for Serenity.
All right, is there a second? Seconded by Leahy.
Second.
$4,015,405. Again, implied in that is the everything but the 70 would come if available from ARPA funding.
Any? Leahy. Second. I'm sorry? Leahy, yeah. Leahy. Thank you. Any discussion? If not, all is in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
That was on the amendment, was it not?
Oh, yeah. Now we're going to go to the original motion as amended. All those in favor of the amended resolution will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously again. We'll now move on to establish salaries for elected department heads, sheriffs and clerk of courts, to follow up on what we had discussed at our last meeting, but in resolution form. So will Molly talk about this, or?
Yes, thank you. So the resolution you have in your packet here is, as you alluded to, Mr. Chair, a follow-up on the previous conversations that we have had. It's in line with the recommendations that had been made to the committee prior, and based on the comparable county data and the direction of this committee, to put together a plan for a base building year-over-year increase for both of these elected positions. So you see that we've done that here. Are there any questions on this resolution as written?
I think it captures our past discussion. Are there any questions? If not, thank you. Are there any motions? Again, we need to take this
McEwen makes a
action.
motion.
Moved by Supervisor McEwen. Is there a second?
Fisher to second.
Fisher seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval, the resolution establishing salaries for the elected department heads, the sheriff and the clerk of courts, will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Restructuring 3/4 of an FTE motorized recreation coordinator to a full-time recreation coordinator. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the committee. Bringing this forward as a recommendation from the Parks Commission and from the Environmental Resources Committee, and also the Parks Committee on the city side. I took this to them yesterday. This is a restructuring of our .75 motorized recreation coordinator, who has recently taken another job for full-time employment. So it's a time to look at that position and see what we can do. Knowing that right now it is really hard to find full-time staff, trying to find a .75 position, I think we feel is going to be even harder because it doesn't come with the benefits or all the benefits. And we do have a need on the recreation side. Part of our goal in our department has been to increase our recreation programs, both on the city and the county side. And right now we only have one recreation professional within our department, and he's spread pretty thin. So in evaluating this position, we think we can continue to do the motorized recreation tasks at a .5 position, and then the other .5 position, if we can increase this to one full-time employee, would be for the recreation side of things, mainly aquatics, helping our recreation superintendent manage our 3 pools on the city side and the outdoor recreation, or the splash pad on the county side. So we think this can be done. In all honesty, I don't believe this is a long-term solution. I think we'll get to a point where we'll want a recreation professional full-time with our recreation superintendent, but this is a way to get there and to work on our recreation programs. There's a revenue-generating side to this as well, to allow both this position and our recreation superintendent to increase our recreation programs. And then it is being more efficient with our motorized recreation coordinator, because that is mostly grant funded. There is some work to be done on there, but our current position has put us in a good spot to continue that, and without a lot of bridge projects, which we had when we increased this position, we think the .5 can handle it. So the main budget, the reason why they're bringing this forward is because it is a change in FTEs. However, there is at this point no request for a change in the budget. The current position is funded .75, the extra additional .5, and this is updated from the ERC meeting if you were a part of that. The .25 addition to this position would actually be funded by the city. When I work out the percentages of the position, having the .75 be county and then 25% be city does fit well, because 50% of that 75 is completely the motorized recreation, which is grant and levy funded. And then a portion of this position on the recreation side would also be county. So there is a split there, and then the additional split would be city. Right now, we currently have a mechanic position open that we've had open since the beginning of the year, and we don't see that filling for at least another month. So the savings alone with that position, which is 50-50, cover the costs on the city side for this year. And then next year, we would eliminate one of our part-time positions, which is about a $12,500 savings to go towards this position as well on the city side. So those are all city costs. There is no additional funding requests or change to our county levy or request at this time.
Are there any questions of Jamie? Any questions? If not, what are your wishes, Chair Gibbs?
One question, Jamie, and that is, from what I see, is the increased cost is $15,671, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And does that include all benefits that a full FTE would be entitled to?
Yes, what's budgeted in here is assume that it's a family benefits that this person would get.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion or questions? If not, a motion would be in order. What are your wishes?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Fisher will make that motion.
Moved by Supervisor Fisher to approve the restructuring of the motorized recreation coordinator to a recreation coordinator. Is there a second?
second.
McEwen second.
Seconded by McEwen. We'll give him. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution to authorize expenditure of up to $195 from the Contingency Fund to leverage a small community air service development grant for Central Wisconsin Airport. Wherever you're comfortable.
As the committee is aware, United Airlines. Mike, hit the mic button. Let's try this again. Good. All right. As the committee is aware, United Airlines left Central Wisconsin Airport at the beginning of this year, January 4th. That's really left us with a hole in air service. Been speaking with the other existing airlines. It's been difficult to backfill that service, which presents us with a challenge, but also a unique opportunity. What I mean by that is United Airlines competed with American head-to-head. Essentially same destination, same route, same timing, more or less the same aircraft. So, that competition was challenging really for both airlines. Now with them pulling out of the market, it gives us a great opportunity for a low-cost carrier, and that's what this SCASD grant goes after. Been working with a number of the low-cost carriers. Within the last month, had three good meetings. The most fruitful is with Sun Country Airlines, and it should be in the packet, but they've provided a letter of support for this SCASD grant to secure additional air service. Now, that isn't announcing service just yet, but that is indicating that they are interested in looking at this if Central Wisconsin was able to receive the SCASD grant. The grant is a matching grant, so this would leverage $900,000 of federal funds, and then the local share would be split between Marathon and Portage County if approved. Yesterday, Portage County Finance Committee approved their share, which is 65-35%, Portage County being 35%, Marathon County being 65%. That is the share of ownership in the airport. It is not guaranteed, so this is, we would need this commitment essentially today to apply for the grant. It's a very competitive grant process, but given the local match, given the letter of support from Sun Country, we're also looking at letters of support from supporting businesses. It would help us to compete well. It's also worth noting that this is maximum exposure of the county, so essentially it's prorated. If Sun Country or any other low-cost carrier or ultra low-cost carrier comes into the market and says, hey, we need $500,000, it would be prorated based on the federal share and the two counties' share. So this would be maximum exposure to the county. The number is a one-time or within the first year to use it, and it's really just to defer offset cost. This is a document that the Wisconsin Airport Management Association put together for another effort they're working on, but has a lot of relevance to our discussion today. Airlines can invest as much as $10 million on one new route to an airport. So this is a new route, a new airline, a lot of cost to get it set up. This $900,000 matched with the local share $1.2 million would just be to defer some of those offset costs. Also, on the flip side, the exit of one airline, which is what we're experiencing right now, could have a negative economic impact, loss of 10 to 18 million for the region. So that's really what we're looking at fighting and combating. Not to mention the added benefit of having a low-cost carrier. So historically, during good travel times, Central Wisconsin Airport has about 150 enplanements, so 300,000 total passengers per year, and that was based on 3 airlines. Of that, we have leakage, so that is people that are geographically located closest to us choosing to fly out of another airport for one or more reasons. Most often quoted is, of course, price. Over half of our passengers that should be flying out of Seaway fly out of other airports, predominantly Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and Madison. A low-cost carrier completely changes how the airline's price, what our options are, and we would seek to recover a lot of that. We'll never get at 100%, but easily could see 200,000 enplanements relatively quickly. Tempered, of course, by the worker shortage. So great opportunity. It is an investment. The $195,000 cannot be airport funds. That's the obvious question. Chair Robinson already asked me that. Due to FAA grant assurances, because the airport accepts funds from the FAA, revenue generated at the airport has to stay at the airport. These payments to the air carriers would constitute revenue diversion, and therefore our dollars cannot be used for that, but community, county dollars can be used for that. Typically don't come here for a request. It has been since 1990, since the airport has been on the tax levy, but a good opportunity, and I think the time is right to apply for that. 2002? Is it that long? After 9/11. Oh, one time, gotcha. With that, happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Chair Gibbs.
Brian, thank you for that. The one question with the loss of the one carrier, how many seats did we lose as far as capacity? They had basically 2 flights, if I understand correctly, into Seaway daily, and so we lost. Most of those were 49 passenger flights.
Yep, all 50-seat passenger aircraft. Seasonally, they would go up to 3 flights a day.
Okay.
Through the summer, last summer, they were 3 flights daily. I haven't done the math. Typically, and you bring up a good point, typically the other airlines would rise to meet that demand because there most certainly is untapped demand in our market. Given the worker shortage, it's been challenging for legacy airlines, United specifically, American and Delta, to do that. Sure. And you see that a little bit with the trends in the industry. The legacy carriers haven't grown in the last 10 years. They've actually reduced. Low-cost carriers and ultra-low-cost carriers really is where all the growth is. And this is the way to get them into a community, these revenue guarantees.
Then just one other follow-up, Brian. If we were to get a low-cost carrier such as Sun Country that we're looking at, what would because we do receive a fee for each ticket that is sold in Platinum, what would that increase the revenue to Seaway if they were to commit to something similar to what was vacated by the airline leaving?
It's a good question. We would have to look at what frequency they fly to give an exact dollar figure. I will say, and this is tangent to your question, but I think very relevant, there are incentives that the airport can offer. So airport revenues or lack thereof can be awarded to the airline. So what I mean by that is we would, if they qualify for our incentive program, we would be able to offset some of those facility fees. So it would be a lower price coming in than what it would be ongoing expense. Really the revenue that we'll realize day one is additional parking revenue and some of the ancillary rental cars, concessions, etc.
Right,
but I don't have a good dollar figure for you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Brian?
Mr. Chair, this is Craig.
Go ahead, Craig.
I guess just so I'm clear, the investment does not guarantee that we're going to get this additional airline in, and if we don't, do we get reimbursed for the money, or is it just
Great
chance
question.
we take?
Yep, great question. It's a reimbursement grant. So if we don't get the grant, there is no money that goes out from the county. So we would not request the money until money is spent. So in my previous example, if Sun Country only needs $500,000, the prorated share would come out of that. So it's not write a check for $195,000. It's write several smaller checks until we meet whatever Sun Country is requesting, or whatever airlines choose to take advantage of this program.
Thank you.
Any other?
And Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
one other question. How much do we have in our contingency fund this year?
You have 800,000 and you have spent $0. You also have your additional $50,000 Finance Committee contingency fund. But this would come out of the big one, so you have 800,000.
Thank you.
The way the resolution is written is it defaults to ARPA, assuming that A, it's eligible, and B, the county board approves. Otherwise, it's contingency.
And that's the same essential resolution that the Finance Committee for Portage County passed yesterday. So it would be consistent.
Are there any questions? If not, Chair Gibbs?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great opportunity if we could get a low-cost carrier that potentially would come to Seaway to our airport and utilize our facilities. So I would make a motion to approve the resolution and move it to the full board for its consideration.
Seconded by Leahy.
Fisher to second.
Third by Fisher. Any discussion? If not, all is in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Initial resolution authorizing not to exceed $24,165,000 of 2022 A general obligation bonds or promissory notes for capital improvement plan projects.
In packet two, the CIP that was approved by the board in November for this year is included. And what we had done is taking a look at all the projects, and like Administrator Leonard said, is the move forward goal was to fix it if it's broken. So this is what you guys approved. And the green, which I kind of squished it up a little high, the green column is the items that we are going to borrow for. So this was approved, and it was approved in the borrowing column. So as you can see, we've got some large new requested projects. And then the green column continues, and then these are the end-of-life or maintenance items that you had approved for borrowing. So the total amount is a little over $23.8 million. And what we did then is that you have a use of cost of borrowing, which is in here as well. Oh, I put it in the first packet. Well, anyway, with the underwriting cost, the other issuance cost, the total amount, if you were going to borrow $23.8 million for buildings and maintenance, the total package is $24,165,000. And that is what the initial resolution would be for. So right now, as planned and as approved, to do those projects, we would be looking at issuing general obligation bonds over 20 years for these projects. And that is what your initial resolution is. And the resolution is also included in packet 1. This is the initial resolution, which in order for it to be eligible to be tax levy supported, needs to have a 3/4 vote of the entire county board. And therefore, you'll be getting this in March to vote on, and it would be the initial resolution. And again, that's the one that needs a 3/4 vote of the total county board. If you are not present, that is a no vote. It's not an absent. Once that is done, then we will go on, and there's a timetable in packet 1 that tells you the timetable. So if you pass the initial resolution in March, there'll be a sale and award resolution in the months after that. Along the same line, separate but same, we are continuing our work on the North Central Healthcare project, and you will also see a sale and award resolution for those separate than this one. Why doesn't that need an initial resolution? Because you already passed that initial resolution in a previous year. So that's what we're going to be voting on and discussing today and going to county board in March is the initial resolution for all the projects listed that were approved in the CIP for this year under the borrowing category. But then we had talked about 2 other things so far in the meeting. One was using ARPA funding for capital projects. What can we do by reevaluating the projects in the CIP? Can we use ARPA dollars for any of those projects? Are any of them qualified? Are any of them able to be used under lost revenue? And can we come up with a reasonable plan to use ARPA funding not only for the borrowed projects, but potentially for any of the other projects as you see the full CIP? And we would look at CIP fund balance. So you have CIP fund balance, and that is the money that is available to you. It's essentially cash. If in your house your water heater goes out and you have maybe a savings account where you keep money for taxes and emergencies, think of that as not only is it for a water heater, but it's for about $8.9 million worth of things that go wrong during the year. And that's what your CIP fund balance, that's funding projects is. So what I'm looking at is we had talked about whether or not we can use ARPA funding to do some of these projects and therefore also alleviate the need to borrow this larger $23.8 million amount. And that's what we're evaluating at this time. So at this time, this is what we have. Is it going to be a issue of $24.165 million? But I did have the financial advisors run a scenario to show you what the impact would be over a 20-year period if we were able to offset borrowed funds with CIP or ARPA funds in order to have a smaller borrowing for 2022. So with that, this would be the debt service as is. You would have debt service over 20 years. It lists notes, but they would probably be bonds at a 20-year amount. And your debt service would be $35.3 million over the course of time. That's principal and interest, and that is at a 4% interest rate for 20 years. And that is hopefully slightly higher estimate, but as you know that we're in a very volatile position right now. So if people flock to safety, which is U.S. Treasuries and government bonds, may be lower than 4, but we also want to be cautious to make sure when we borrow, I believe it would be in May, that we aren't underestimating what the total cost of borrowing would be. So right now that's $35.3 million. And if, just as an assumption, what we wanted to do for fun is if we could offset $4 million, that'd be a little over $3 million of the $4 million of the projects. If we could offset that and resize that borrowing to $20,165,000 or reduce it by $4 million, what would the total cost of borrowing be over that 10 or 20-year period? And that would be $29 million. So we are looking at a very substantial amount that you would be able to save if we wanted to do that. Now, we can pass the initial resolution at a up to $24.16 million. You can always pass this one at a higher amount. We can go and try to determine which projects we would be able to offset with ARPA and bring that back to you for a sale or an award resolution at a lower dollar amount. I just emailed to make sure that the financial advisor was okay with that. One of the people in this room this evening is Jamie Polly, who has already worked with us to come up with some of her projects that she feels would be we would be able to offset that. And I think we came up with a little over $1 million with just the Parks Department alone. So I just wanted to put that out there. We're asking for the initial resolution to be approved tonight at the 24.165 million, and that we would hope to, if it's palatable to you and it would be something that you feel would be important, we would try to present a lower amount at the sale and award resolutions that will be coming up in April and May.
Again, this is the resolution authorizing what we had done back in November. So what are,
And I'm sorry, there was just one more, and you can put it, if you're into your tax rate, just shows the difference in the mill rate by having the different amounts. The debt service payment on an annual basis, and that would be the difference in the mill rate based on the amount that would be levied for these projects.
are there any questions of Christie? And again, this is a higher rate than we would anticipate
Yep.
in normal years just because of our catch-up. Chair Gibbs.
Just a question. Do we have any idea, Christie, of how many projects might qualify for ARPA funding right now? I know we have from the Parks Department an estimate of roughly $1 million worth of projects. Do we have any other inclining that there's another 3 million, there's another 10 million?
That's actually what we're doing, and I can go back to the, apologize for having two packets today too. But as you can see, there's some cyber and some technology issues that that's directly specified in ARPA. Some of the ones that Jamie had mentioned could be under tourism and recreation. I can't think of the category, but it's where you're providing lighting for better lighting in your parks, enhancements, and rehabilitation. So we believe that we should be able to search and find, we guessed the 4 million because we think that would be a pretty close estimate what we would feel comfortable providing to you, give or take $1 million. But
Chair Gibbs.
Just one other comment. You know, I know we've looked at and we've discussed many times what we anticipate the lost revenue to be. And we have calculated the lost revenue portion of the ARPA funding for 1 year at roughly 8.6 million. We now are in the process of starting potentially the audit for the 2021 year, and we will have a calculation at some point for additional lost revenue calculation for 2021. And so I think it's really this committee's purview to look at whatever number they wish to. If you look at 8.6 million and assume, and you know what happens when we assume, so we don't do that, we'll wait till we actually have a hard number for 2021, and then we have 2022 yet, and 2023 yet, that is probably going to cover, unless things turn around totally, the full 26.3 million of ARPA funding. And so I bring that up only for a discussion at this committee level that you could potentially look at utilizing the vast majority of the ARPA funding for offsetting capital projects. And I'm not saying that we want to do that, but I just bring that up for discussion because I do think that it is a potential option.
And I just have two comments. One of the really beneficial things on ARPA that did change is that the revenue loss calculation was figuring a increase each year in revenue of a 4.2, and they did change it so that the final report was able to use the 5.1%. So I think it went from 6.8 to 8.3 in lost revenue. The other item that did change was that you can take up to 10 million limit all day long. You can't do that each year. And due to the fact that in our first year of revenue loss, we were able to report 8.3 of the 10 million we, at this time, believe that we will capture more than that 10 million. So if you hear that municipalities are picking up the 10 million or up to the 10 million, their total amount, we feel that that would be limiting our ability to use that lost revenue. So I just wanted to add those. And the other reason I provided this comparison is to show you by investing in using ARPA funding or other cash on hand, the CIP funds, you do save a significant dollar amount over the course of the 20-year borrowing. So it is an investment not only in the infrastructure that you build today, but it's an investment in saving on additional interest cost and borrowing cost while that facility is being maintained and taken care of.
I'll just be the devil's advocate and point out the other side if you put it all into capital, you've lost opportunity costs to address other things like childcare and others. So I know Chair Gibbs threw it out there for discussion, but I think we want to make sure that we are cautious in how we proceed. And I think the issue before us today is because it's an initial resolution and it's a not to exceed, we can always lower it going forward. The question is do we want to advance the county board, the initial resolution, at the higher amount while we contemplate the options that are available to us going forward?
Just one other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I might. I'm not in any way insinuating that we need to, fund all of the bonding requests with ARPA funding. I'm just saying that that is an option. I think the other thing is we don't have as the administrator started this meeting off with, one of the comments is we've had 12 project requests. And I do know of one major project request that this county is an owner in, and that is North Central Healthcare. And there is a significant shortfall of revenue down there. And so I am not in any way, shape, or means trying to insinuate that we take the full 26 million and use it for replacing bonding. But I do think that it's a discussion worth looking at, especially if we have projects that clearly qualify under the other criteria rather than the lost revenue. We should clearly identify those.
So what are your wishes or questions or comments relative to the issue in the resolution before us? Supervisor Leahy.
I would make a motion to still approve the initial resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Leahy. Is there a second?
Second by Fisher.
Seconded by Fisher. Any discussion?
Just one question. So, Mr. Chairman, at what point will we take up the potential of utilizing or substituting bonding for CIP projects that are currently in the CIP listing?
You have that schedule in there?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to go to.
I clearly understand this is just the initial resolution, initial authorizing resolution. It doesn't mean that we have to go sell for the full amount at a future May sell date. But I guess the question becomes, we have an election in April. This board's going to change significantly, potentially, up to 24 different board members, potentially. And so I think we need to have a clear expectation as to when we're going to be taking those issues up.
Just as a helpful guide, I've provided it's in the packet, but the next time you would get a crack at this one would be on the set sale resolution, which would be where we would really, that means you set what the sale will be, and that's going to be your April 2nd meeting of this committee, and then your Tuesday, April 26th board meeting. And so that is, set sale means that is the date that we would want to make sure that you've got the amount that you're going to be in that green borrow column.
So we basically have a month.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. Resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenses of capital projects, planned projects, and from proceeds of borrowing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
It's been moved by Gibbs. Is there a second?
Second by Fisher.
And this is a traditional resolution that we adopt in all our borrowing issues. It allows us to recover those costs that we've incurred relative to those projects before the bond is issued. Then we just advance it from the county funds and we recapture it when the borrowing occurs. Any discussion? If not, all is in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Policy issues, discussion, and committee determination. Workday. We're going to be hearing a lot about Workday in the upcoming months.
Okay, super easy. These are just things that we'll be talking about with you in the future. We were putting together our Workday solution, and one of the things is that the city and the county and the IT department all have different meal per diem rates. So we would have to run 6 different rules, and we are going to let you know we're going to do one. It's this one, or this one. So per diem for meals, super easy thing. If you go on a trip, proved travel, you can have a per diem for meals on a daily basis based on the IRS guidelines. Our current one for out of state is 46. We're going to 50, which would then be consistent with what the data center has. City has also agreed to do that. And that is still under the IRS regulations for per diem in the lower 48 states. Their number's 59 as of October 21st, 2021. This is just to let you know that even the small things are going to make it easier on people nowadays, and there's a tiny little increase. The second one that may be coming to you, I'm following up on that, is capital assets. We capitalize our assets at $5,000. The city's going to 10. We're going to go to 10, and they are also at 50 for infrastructure. So that's another item that we're going to do so that we can clean up and write off some of those miscellaneous assets. If you ask, but wait, this television computer system is worth $5,000. There's contents insurance on all of our buildings, so if it does burn up, we already have it covered. We don't need to itemize it as a capitalized item in our financial statements. Second little super quick item, and the last one is just a presentation that I didn't provide, but our Corp Council did one on capital leases. GASB 87, GASB is a 4-letter word for accounting rules for governments, and that one is making us use what used to be operating leases. They have to be capitalized, and so that you will see a change to our financial statements in the future because we will now capitalize some of those things we considered operating leases. Those are my 3 items.
All right. Are there any questions? Looking forward to,
Supervisor Fisher here.
go ahead.
Just a quick question for you, Christy. The shift from capitalizing at 5,000 to capitalizing at 10,000, how much additional expense does that bring into the budget for next year?
We're going to take a look at that. This is just for policy discussion. I'll bring that back in April, but we had done this previously, I believe, probably about 15 years ago, and most of those items are already fully depreciated. So you're going on a 5 to 7 year life, and now a lot of the ones that used to be would be like computers and some of that, but right now even all these computers in this room are probably under 1,000. So we'll bring that back to you. It's a good question, but I don't believe it's going to be material, and that's what I have to run by the auditor as well.
For capitalizing
Great,
for,
thank you.
there's differences between capitalizing for the budget and capitalizing for the KIP too. And what is our KIP threshold is 30,000?
25 or 30, yep.
Yeah, at a higher level. You might have to re-educate us as we move ahead. That was there for informational purposes, and we look forward to.
Mr. Chair, if I can, just very briefly, one of the things the committee asked relative to its action and the board's action and on approving the recent changes to the procurement policy. Procurement policy was ensuring that there was ongoing training for department heads, and just an ancillary item to item 6.1C with capital leases. I just wanted to report to the board. We did, Corp Counsel and Christie did present at a department head meeting an educational presentation relative to capital leases, essentially what they are, what requirements are attendant to them, and what process should be utilized through our new procurement code to make sure we're in compliance with not only all the governmental rules relative to accounting, but also our procurement policy. Just wanted to report that back because that was a request of the board.
And one other note, the procurement flow chart that you received, we actually sent that to Workday, and they are building our work process around that for the procurement area. So it was extremely helpful. Usually we have to go through and talk step by step, but that workflow actually was able to be pretty much built into the Workday procurement process so far.
All right. Any other questions, comments? If not, for announcements, our next meeting is on the 22nd, which is also the day of the county board educational meeting. Just a reminder that we're not meeting on that Thursday, but that Tuesday. Any other announcements? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by McEwen, seconded by Arstead. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thank you.